All right. Good afternoon. I'm joined here this afternoon by our Governor Andrew Cuomo, our Commissioner of Homeland Security Jerome Haver, and Adjunct General Patrick Murphy. Frank?
I'd just like to say a few things here. Number one, I'd like to welcome Governor Cuomo here. As I said earlier here, this is the worst disaster we've had, but this is the best prepared and the best organized we've had as far as recovery. The governor's come through for us big time here. The National Guard, he brought the National Guard in, and I've been working for better than 30 years to get some of these projects done, and the governor and the Guard has accomplished that in about a week. That's a lot to say, and it's been a lot of work. We're gaining on it with his guidance and his help. We're going to come out of this pretty good. I think the sun's starting to shine out there a little bit, and the rain is stopping. But that's all I'd like to say. I just like to, my hat is off to the Guard and the governor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the citizens of Herkimer County, I want to welcome Governor Cuomo back again. This is, I believe, his third or fourth time here. He's a gentleman of his word. He's come back to visit us and to help. We're into day 9 of this, and every day that goes by, it gets better, and it gets better because of good people we have locally and good people we have throughout the state. And Governor Cuomo is one of those people. So, Governor, on behalf of the people of Herkimer County, I want to welcome you back.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank Chairman Bono and Mayor Spoto and Mayor James Barron and Mayor Ainsworth, the National Guard, General Murphy, and the emergency services for the state headed by Jerry Hauer. We just did a tour around and we saw the work underway, and it's amazing how much progress has been made in a relatively short period of time. We looked at some spots that we had seen about a week ago, and they were just, it was unimaginable, the destruction. And now, as Frank Spoto said, the sun is starting to shine, and that's the metaphor, I think, that works for the day. And you see the other end of the tunnel. First, my hat's off to the local elected officials who have worked extraordinarily well. All the public employees who have metaphorically killed themselves over these past few days. They've been working so many hours, I don't know how they're still on their feet under very difficult circumstances. It's been a pleasure for the state employees who have come in to help, and we brought them in from all over the state. But it's a pleasure for the state employees to work with a local force that is as good as the local forces here. So my applause to them. We have done what we needed to do in terms of emergency stabilization and emergency repairs. There's some more work to do, but you can feel that we've made good progress on that front. We've also highlighted some longer-term issues. The creek management, the stream management is going to be a longer-term issue. It can't wait before you have this kind of damage and destruction before you really address the problem, and that's going to have to be done on an ongoing basis, and we're going to be working on that. But we said from the very beginning there was a 2-step process. Step 1 was the emergency stabilization. That step we're basically through. Step 2, you get to the reconstruction on a longer-term basis. And that there are 2 components. There's helping homeowners rebuild their homes now, those 150 or so homes that have significant damage, and also helping make the local governments whole, because there's a lot of costs that have been incurred by the local governments, a lot of costs that will have to be incurred by the local governments, a lot of infrastructure work, a lot of road work, a lot of culvert work, et cetera. The money has to come from somewhere to help people rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives. The money has to come from somewhere to help the local governments pay for this kind of damage. We have requested a federal disaster declaration. We did it last week. I'm going to call the White House tomorrow because we still haven't heard. I'm going to urge the President to make that disaster declaration. But I want the people of Herkimer and Madison and Montgomery and any affected community to know this. The community has done what it needed to do. People came together. People found their better selves and reached out and helped one another. And I want to make sure government does what government is supposed to do. So I'm going to push the White House tomorrow to get the president to declare a disaster area, which would then start those FEMA funds flowing for homeowners and for local government. But if on the off chance that FEMA is not responsive for one reason or another, then the state of New York will stand behind that disaster declaration, and we'll turn to the state for help, and the state will be there. The legislature is not currently in session, and we'll see how creative we can be on the state side, but worst case scenario, I would be prepared to call a special session to have the legislature come back to deal with this issue if need be, because this is what government is all about. We were chatting inside, many of us, different forms of public service for different reasons, different occupations, but in a situation like this, it's crystal clear. You go into government, you go into public service to help people. That's what this is. That's the business we are in. We are in the business of helping people. And in an emergency situation like this, it is so clear that people need help. And it's not esoteric and it's not academic. It's practical and it's physical and it's right in front of you. They need help rebuilding their home. They need help putting their lives back together. The local governments need help in now financially stabilizing themselves. And this state government is going to be there for the people who have just gone through this. And again, if it entails a special session, I would be prepared to call a special session to do it. But let's take one step at a time. First, let's try to get the federal disaster aid, because I believe, I've been through this a number of times, there is no reason why this does not qualify for federal disaster assistance. And that's the case I'm going to be making tomorrow to the White House. Once again, I want to applaud all the local officials for a truly extraordinary job. Questions for myself or any of my colleagues?
Governor, what's the sense you've had, if any, from Washington as to whether there is a willingness to declare disaster areas in these communities?
You know, they have been responsive in terms of being here to do assessments, and we've been working with them literally from day one in terms of doing an assessment, individual home assessment, what they call public facilities, roads, dams, bridges, et cetera. So they have been doing the assessment, and it is only a matter of days, but we haven't gotten a definitive declaration yet either. And again, we're going to push starting tomorrow, and the White House can actually make this happen if they choose. But what I said to local officials is, one way or another, we're going to be there and be a backstop, because it's too much to ask people whose homes have just been destroyed and whose lives have just been turned upside down. You're on your own. I'm not going to say to the local elected officials who are behind us, you're on your own. You figure out how to pay the bills. They are already cash strapped, and the answer is not to raise taxes on people who are already beleaguered. So one way or the other, I'm going to make sure that these communities are backstopped, hopefully by the federal government. If not by the federal government, then the state of New York.
Will tomorrow be the first time you've spoken to the President about this?
On this issue, yes.
Would you mind talking about Fort Plain? I know you've been there as well, Governor. That's in our coverage area in the Albany market. Today would have been Ethel Healy's 87th birthday, and she, of course, was killed tragically in that flooding. She's been a face on this terrible story in Fort Plain. Can you talk about that community?
In some ways, I am surprised that more people didn't lose their lives, believe it or not. When you see the extent of the damage and how fast the water came, that's the one thing you hear from everyone. There was virtually no warning, and when there was warning, the water was on top of people literally in a matter of minutes. That situation obviously is terrible, and it's unfortunate for her family, and we'll remember them in our prayers. But we are very lucky that it was not much, much worse, because this could have been. This could have been. And in a situation like this, the danger is so present, and it's so important that everyone does what they need to do and everyone is prepared, and that it works from the local officials to the fire department to the police department to the individual citizen who is their own first responder in their own home. And people have to take responsibility for themselves and their families in these situations, and they have to use caution. So it could have been a lot worse.
Governor, from the assessments that local officials have given you, how much, what's the amount of money that it would take to start rebuilding these municipalities that have been damaged by the flooding and the rains?
Oh, you will be my guess. If I had to guess, I would say 60, 70, 80 million dollars.
And is that in all of the counties that you've declared under this emergency?
Yes. Just for the emergency repairs. It's not for long-term reconstruction efforts, just to repair what was broken.
Does the state have that kind of money if FEMA does not come through?
No, we don't have any money either, which I tried to claim poverty to my colleagues. But the state is in a better position to handle this than Fort Plains is or Herkimer is. So we're not going to leave them out there alone.
Where would that money come from?
We'd have to find it. But we have a bigger budget than a town or a city or a county.
And in the meantime, what are you telling municipality leaders around here to do? What is their job on their local level?
They've been doing their job, and they've been doing it extraordinarily well. They've been coming together. They've been cooperating. We've had an extraordinary partnership that has just worked really, really well. You know, this is like a machine that you have to start up immediately once the emergency happens, and all these pieces have to work together flawlessly. The town has to work with the county, has to work with the state emergency, has to work with the National Guard, and they're like gears in a watch, and they all have to click, and if one of those is out of place, nothing works. So they've done an extraordinary job. And they have more work to do. You drive down the street and you see on the curb the amount of damage that still needs to be repaired. So there's more work to do. But on the longer term effort, they're going to need financial assistance. That's the federal government, that's FEMA. Worst case scenario, that doesn't happen, and I'm hopeful that it does, that FEMA does come through. Worst case scenario, we'll figure out how the state can be helpful.
And in your tours around here, what would you say is the worst amount of damage that you've seen? Is there any particular area that you just went, wow?
You know, somebody loses a home. I don't think they're not comparable. You know, it's a life that is turned upside down. It's a family that loses everything in the blink of an eye. And things that you will never replace. You know, you can go back and you can fix the structure, and you can dry it out and you can shovel out the mud. But there's a lifetime of memories that are lost. There's a trauma that a family goes through. So that's happened too many times in these communities over the past few days.
And in the past, when you have worked with FEMA, is there any kind of time limit that you're going to be working with? Is it going to be a couple of weeks before you make a determination about the state?
I'd like to have an answer by the end of this week, one way or the other, because the local officials need to plan and they need to know what revenues they can count on.
Governor, you've spoken a lot about the government's role in disasters. In recent times, we've heard a lot of people talk about wanting to scale back government. Do you think this is an important reminder of some of the roles that government does play, both state and federally?
I said during the budget session, when we were debating the budget in Albany, and there's a whole argument about do we really need government. I was talking about I've been in more emergency situations in my 2 years than I care to remember. I've never heard anyone say, we don't need any help. You know, I've never seen a boat go up to a house that was flooded and the person said, you know, I don't need government assistance. It is the purest form of government service. It is about helping people, and it's about the ability and the competence to help people. You know, you can say, I really want to be of assistance, but then you have to have the ability and the competence, and you have to be able to perform, and your people have to have the skill, and you have to be trained, and you have to know what the other levels of government are doing. And it worked here. It worked magnificently well here. But it strips away all the politics. It strips away all the artificial discussion. And it either works and it helps people, or it doesn't work, and it's not a net benefit. And there's something stark and real to these situations that is refreshing in some ways, I'll tell you the truth, because a lot of the baloney just goes right down the road with the rest of the water.
Mechanically speaking, Governor, how would the FEMA money be distributed? Would it go to the communities and then to individual homeowners, or would it go
Normally runs through the state. There's two types of funding. One is what they call individual assistance. One is what they call public assistance. The individual assistance is available to literally homeowners, and that'll be homeowner to FEMA, and they can reimburse for damage to the home, damage to the belongings, damage to the property, and then there's reimbursement to the local governments for public damages.
Is that generally 90 to 100% reimbursement?
Yes, sir.
Finally, would you talk a little bit more about the creek management? You mentioned that earlier. Many people who live near, for instance, the Esclago Creek in Fort Plains say for years no one cleaned it out. They didn't know whose job it was to clean it out. And then at the worst possible time, it backed up. What more can be done to
Well,
prevent?
we have to take this more seriously on an ongoing basis, and we have to deal with the balance. You know, you don't want to disturb the creek any more than you have to disturb the creek, because you want to preserve the ecology of the creek and the environment of the creek. I understand that. On the other hand, the creek has to have the capacity to manage the flow when you have a storm, and the creek has to be able to manage that without overwhelming the residences that are along the creek. So, it's too late to do this after the fact. You know, to do it right, you're doing it on an ongoing basis. And I think we have to do a better job at finding that balance, because the creeks have an important function that they have to fulfill.
Is there a money issue there and finding the funds to do that? Of all
I
the
know
reasons?
it's more of a balanced, regulatory balance issue.
Do you think that that balance might change in light of these flooding events that have happened?
You know, I think a lot has changed, and a lot has to change. This is a totally different orientation for us. We have extreme weather patterns very frequently. That's a fact. It's not a political statement. It's not debatable. You look at the past 2 years. Look at Hurricane Sandy. Look at Storm Irene. Look at Storm Lee. Look at the past 2 weeks here. Niagara County. I mean, it's all over the state with more and more frequency. The oceans are getting warmer. It changes the weather patterns. That is inarguable. When you have these situations, it stresses the infrastructure, stresses the creek system, and we have to recalibrate given this pattern of extreme weather. So one of the things we have to rethink is the stream management, the creek management. Well, it was fine for a lot of years. I know, but this is now different. And these are different facts, and these are different circumstances. So adjust accordingly.
Last question.
Any of my colleagues have anything to add?
Just
It's
thank you.
surprisingly quiet here. Come up here,
Thank you.
Frank.
Thank you.
He's done a heck of a job,
I
Mr.
just
Spoto. He
I-
really has.
I just want to thank this guy. It's very emotional to be through everything that we've been through, and to have somebody at your back like this guy here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.